I never thought I'd be telling a story like this, but here we are. My wife and I moved into what we thought was a perfect neighborhood 3 years ago. Great schools nearby, friendly neighbors, and a beautiful park within walking distance. The houses were well maintained with perfectly manicured lawns and tasteful landscaping. What we didn't account for was Deborah Wilkins, our Homeowners Association president, who my wife and I had taken to calling Karen behind closed doors. Little did we know that our private nickname would become all too fitting during what should have been one of the happiest days of our lives. It all started when we painted our front door navy blue. According to Deborah, this was a violation of the HOA's color policy, despite the fact that 3 other houses on our street had nearly identical doors. I politely pointed this out during the monthly meeting, even bringing photos as evidence. Deborah's face turned almost as red as the approved door color, as she stammered about grandfathered exceptions and how those homeowners had special permission. It became clear that Deborah's real issue wasn't with our door color, but with the fact that we hadn't personally asked for her blessing first. "I've been president of this HOA for 7 years, she informed me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I know every rule in our bylaws by heart, and I take my responsibility to maintain our community standards very seriously." I tried to be diplomatic. "I understand that, Deborah. We just wanted to make our house feel like home. The navy blue complements our brick exterior perfectly." She shook her head slowly, as if explaining something to a particularly dense child. "Personal preference doesn't override community guidelines. You'll need to repaint within 14 days or face a fine." Over the next few months, we received violation notices for everything imaginable. Our trash cans were visible from the street for more than 24 hours after collection. Our holiday decorations exceeded the acceptable square footage by apparently 2 square inches. My wife's garden gnome collection was deemed tacky and inappropriate for our community aesthetic. Each notice came with Deborah's signature and a personal note expressing her disappointment in our inability to comply with simple community standards. We tried to be good neighbors. We adjusted our trash can placement, measured our holiday decorations with a ruler, and reluctantly moved my wife's beloved gnomes to our backyard. None of it seemed to matter. Deborah had marked us as troublemakers, and nothing we did could change that. One evening, I spotted Deborah actually measuring the height of our grass with a ruler while walking her immaculately groomed poodle. When she saw me watching from the window, she didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Instead, she gave me a little wave and made a show of writing something in her ever-present notebook. "Is she seriously measuring our grass?" my wife Emma asked, peering over my shoulder. "Yep, I'm starting to think she doesn't have anything better to do with her time." Emma sighed, resting her hands on her very pregnant belly. "I was hoping she'd ease up once she saw we were expecting. You'd think she'd have some compassion." Unfortunately, Emma's pregnancy only seemed to give Deborah more ammunition. She started leaving pamphlets about noise control and maintaining property values despite children in our mailbox. When Emma organized a small baby shower in our backyard, Deborah showed up unannounced to inform us that our guests were parked inappropriately and that our celebration would need to end by 6 p.m. due to noise ordinances. Then came the day that pushed everything over the edge. Emma was 8.5 months pregnant with our first child. We'd been eagerly awaiting our daughter's arrival, and the nursery was all set up with a beautiful crib that my father had handcrafted. Emma had been experiencing Braxton Hicks contractions for a few days, so we were on high alert. I was working from home that afternoon when Emma called out to me from the kitchen. "Honey, I think my water just broke," she said, her voice a mixture of excitement and panic. I rushed to her side, my heart pounding. This was it! I helped Emma to our car and quickly grabbed the hospital bag we'd packed weeks ago. Just as I was backing out of our driveway, Deborah appeared, marching across our front lawn with a clipboard in hand. I rolled down my window, trying to remain calm. "We're having a baby, Deborah. Whatever it is, it can wait," I said firmly. Deborah peered into her car, her eyes narrowing when she spotted Emma breathing through what was clearly a contraction. "Your hedges are 3 inches over the regulation height," she said, completely ignoring our situation. I've been measuring all morning and yours are the only ones out of compliance. I'll need this violation form signed before you leave." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Deborah, my wife is in labor. We need to get to the hospital right now." Emma moaned in pain beside me, clutching her stomach. "Please, Deborah," she managed to say between breaths. "We really need to go." For a moment, something like concern flashed across Deborah's face, but it quickly hardened back into her usual stern expression. "Rules are rules," she insisted, thrusting the clipboard toward me. "This will only take a second." I put the car in park, snatched the clipboard, scribbled something that barely resembled my signature and handed it back. "Happy now? We're leaving." Deborah stepped back, examining my signature with a frown. "This doesn't look like your usual signature. Are you trying to invalidate this notice?" At that moment, Emma let out a cry that made my blood run cold. "The contractions are getting closer," she gasped. "We need to go now." Didn't bother responding to Deborah. I shifted the car back into drive and pulled away, leaving her standing on our lawn. In my rearview mirror, I could see her talking into her phone, no doubt reporting me to someone else on the HOA board. We made it about halfway to the hospital when Emma's contractions suddenly intensified. She was in tremendous pain, and I could tell something wasn't right. I pulled over and called 911. The dispatcher assured me an ambulance was on its way and instructed me to keep Emma comfortable and time her contractions. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," I told Emma, trying to keep my voice steady despite my growing fear. "Help is on the way." She nodded, her face pale and covered in sweat. "This doesn't feel normal. Something's wrong." The ambulance arrived within minutes, and the paramedics quickly assessed Emma's condition. Her blood pressure was dangerously high, and they suspected she might be developing preeclampsia. They decided it would be safer to transport her in the ambulance rather than have me continue driving. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately," the lead paramedic told me. "Preeclampsia can be very serious. You can follow us in your car or ride with your wife." As they were loading Emma into the back, I noticed a familiar car pull up behind us. It was Deborah's sleek black BMW. What on earth was she doing here? I didn't have time to wonder as I climbed into the ambulance to sit with Emma, holding her hand and trying to keep her calm as she fought through another contraction. We were about to leave when one of the paramedics came to the back doors with a concerned look on his face. "We've got a problem," he said. "Looks like we have a flat tire, and it doesn't look like an accident." I carefully released Emma's hand and stepped outside to see what was happening. The rear driver's side tire of the ambulance was completely flat, with what looked suspiciously like a knife slash across its sidewall. The paramedic was already on his radio, calling for another ambulance, but I knew that would mean precious minutes we might not have. And there was Deborah, standing next to her car with a strange, satisfied expression on her face. In her hand was a small pocket knife, which she hurriedly stuffed into her purse when she saw me looking. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as rage filled my body. "I don't know what you're talking about," Deborah replied calmly. "I saw the ambulance lights and came to see if everything was okay. That's what good neighbors do." "You slashed the tire?" I couldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. What kind of person would do something so dangerous and reckless? "That's a serious accusation," Deborah said, her voice cool. "And without proof, I'd be careful about making such claims. Maybe if you'd fixed your hedges instead of rushing off, none of this would have happened." I was stunned into silence. Was she actually suggesting this was our fault? That her petty HOA vendetta justified endangering my wife and unborn child? "She's actually admitting it," said a voice behind me. It was the second paramedic, who had been quietly observing our exchange. "Ma'am, do you realize what you've done? You've interfered with emergency medical services. That's a criminal offense." Deborah's confident expression faltered slightly. "I was simply trying to ensure that proper procedures were followed. They left without completing the required documentation." "Documentation?" the paramedic repeated incredulously. What documentation could possibly be more important than getting a woman in labor to the hospital? "HOA violations compound daily," Deborah said primly. "It's important to address issues immediately." Thankfully, one of the paramedics had already called the police. They arrived just as the backup ambulance pulled up. Emma was transferred quickly and we were finally on our way to the hospital, but not before I gave my statement to the police and pointed them toward Deborah, who was suddenly very interested in leaving the scene. "I can't believe she would do something like this," I told the officer taking my statement. "I know she's been unreasonable with HOA rules, but this is a whole new level. Unfortunately, we see people abuse positions of power all the time," the officer replied, shaking his head. "Small amounts of authority can go to people's heads. Don't worry, we're taking this very seriously." The next few hours were a blur of medical professionals, monitors beeping, and Emma's incredible strength as she brought our daughter into the world. Charlotte Rose was born healthy despite the complications, and I've never felt relief like I did when I heard her first cry. Emma stabilized quickly after the delivery, and by that evening I was sitting beside my wife's hospital bed, watching our daughter sleep in a clear bassinet. That's when a police officer knocked gently on the door. She introduced herself as Officer Martinez and explained that she needed to follow up on the incident with the ambulance. What she told us next left us both speechless. "We took Ms. Wilkins in for questioning after finding the knife in her purse," Officer Martinez explained. "The paramedic who witnessed your conversation also provided a statement. During questioning, Ms. Wilkins actually admitted to slashing the tire, claiming she wanted to teach you a lesson about respecting authority. She seemed to think that delaying your trip to the hospital would somehow make you more compliant with HOA regulations in the future." I shook my head in disbelief. "That's insane. She could have put my wife and daughter in serious danger." "Exactly," Officer Martinez nodded. "That's why she's been charged with criminal mischief, interfering with emergency medical services, and reckless endangerment. Those are serious charges. The district attorney is considering adding attempted assault as well, given the circumstances." Emma squeezed my hand. "What happens now?" "Ms. Wilkins was released on bail, but she has a court date set for next month. Given the evidence and her own admission, I'd say she's facing some significant consequences. The criminal charges could result in jail time and at minimum substantial fines. The emergency medical services are also filing a civil suit against her for the damage to the ambulance and the delay in patient care." The officer paused, glancing at our sleeping daughter. "Congratulations, by the way, she's beautiful." After Officer Martinez left, Emma and I sat in stunned silence for a few minutes. Our quiet neighborhood drama had escalated beyond anything we could have imagined. "Do you think she'll actually go to jail?" Emma asked softly, stroking Charlotte's tiny hand. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think she's finally facing real consequences for her actions. This isn't just about paint colors or garden gnomes anymore." 2 weeks later, we received a certified letter from the HOA board. Deborah had been unanimously removed from her position as president and banned from serving on the board in the future. The letter included a formal apology for her behavior and an assurance that all previous violation notices had been rescinded. "As a board, we want to express our sincere regret for the stress and danger Ms. Wilkins' actions placed you and your family in," the letter read. "Her behavior was unacceptable and in no way represents the values of our community. We hope you will accept our apology and give us the opportunity to rebuild trust with you as neighbors." It was signed by every remaining board member, along with a handwritten note congratulating us on the birth of our daughter. It seemed that Deborah's removal had allowed the reasonable people in our neighborhood to step forward. The criminal case moved surprisingly quickly. Deborah's lawyer advised her to plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. The judge wasn't feeling particularly merciful, however. He sentenced her to 6 months in county jail, 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service at the very hospital where Emma delivered, and a $15,000 fine. She would also have to pay for the ambulance tire and additional emergency response costs. I was present for the sentencing hearing, watching as Deborah's carefully maintained facade crumbled when the judge announced his decision. Her perfectly styled hair couldn't hide the shock on her face as she was led away by court officers. The last thing I heard her say was, "But I was just enforcing the rules." The courtroom doors closed behind her, cutting off her protests and bringing an end to her reign of HOA terror.